Hello everyone, and welcome to the RV Inspection and Care channel. I'm Dwayne and I'm a certified RV inspector, and today we're going to be talking about how much you can safely tow in your RV travels. And the really good news here is that the information in this video is good for pretty much all RV owners. It doesn't matter whether you have a motorhome or whether you have a towable. What we're going to cover is going to be good for you to know. Now, the first thing I want to talk about here today is I know the way a lot of people get their information on towing is they just ask their salesperson or the dealer that they're buying the RV from, and the dealer or salesperson tells them what they need to tow or what they need to be able to tow their RV, and then they go out and they get that. But you know, I really don't suggest that that's the best source of information for towing. And why? Because the internet is filled with stories on RV forums and also in social media about folks that did that and then were very sorry because the tow setup that they got just really didn't work correctly. So that's not the best way to do it. Now, why is it not the best? Well, you know, if you stop and think about it, the RV salesperson or the dealer really has one major thing in mind, and that is selling you an RV. So naturally, they're going to be way too optimistic about how easy it is to get something to tow or to get something to tow it. So that's really not your best or sole piece of information there. Instead, what we're going to talk about in the video today is how if you know just a handful of weight ratings that are established by the manufacturers of RVs and vehicles that are towed by them or tow them, then with those weight ratings, you can easily figure out all that you need to know about how much you can tow in your RV travels. Now, the last video that I made, the one right before this one, I kind of laid the groundwork for this, in that we talked about how to make sure that your RV itself is not overweight. And really, we covered two weight ratings in that video, and that's GVWR, Gross Vehicle Weight Rating, then GAWR, which is Gross Axle Weight Rating. And really, just using those two alone, you can make sure that your RV itself is not overweight. But now, we're going to add another vehicle into the mix. So here is where we need a little bit more information, and there's two more pieces of information that you need to know about to add in with those two that I gave you in the last video, and you put that together and you can pretty much figure out what you need to tow with almost any rig. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and quickly review those first two weight ratings that I covered in the first video. That way, those of you that saw that video aren't just sitting around being bored. We'll go through those fairly quickly, and then we'll get into the two additional pieces of information that you need to know on the subject of towing. So let's go ahead and let's get started on that right now. Okay, so here is the first weight rating that we want to talk about today, and that is GVWR. It means Gross Vehicle Weight Rating. The real-world definition is that it is the most the vehicle can safely weigh while traveling down the road. Now, what does that mean? Well, it includes the weight of the vehicle itself, you, your passengers, your cargo, fuel, everything as that vehicle's going down the highway should not exceed the maximum weight limit that's established by the GVWR. Now we go on to GAWR. It's the Gross Axle Weight Rating. The real-world definition is the most weight an axle can support while traveling down the road. So here we're going to kind of take it down to each axle, not just the whole amount of weight on the vehicle, but make sure that it's not unevenly distributed on the vehicle. So each axle has its weight rating, and you don't want to exceed that limit to keep things in a safe manner going down the road. And then our final weight rating is the new one, the one we're going to talk about today that's different from the last vehicle. It is GCWR, Gross Combined Weight Rating. The real-world definition is the most both vehicles can weigh in total while they're towing and going down the road. So what it simply means is that your RV, if you take the GVWR, the gross vehicle weight rating of the RV, add that to the gross vehicle weight rating of the tow or towed vehicle, then the two together should never exceed the maximum limit established by the GCWR. So using these three weight ratings, you can really keep things under control. You know where your limits are for weight as you're towing. All right, so let's see these weight ratings in action. We'll use a couple of examples, and the first one is our own rig here. And as you can see, we're parked at a rest stop, and it's actually a very good place to make this explanation of weight ratings. Because as you can see, the whole motorhome here must have a weight that is under the limit that's set by the GVWR. It can't go over that weight limit. So everything in my motorhome, us, our cargo, our fuel, our water tanks, everything cannot exceed the weight established as the limit by the GVWR. But then I've got a limit that's established over here for my towed vehicle, the Honda CR-V. So it's got a GVWR, and all the things that's in the CR-V, all of the weight that it imparts cannot exceed the limit set by the GVWR of that vehicle. But now there are 4 axles. There's 2 on the CR-V, there's 2 on the motorhome, and they have their own weight ratings. The limit that you can have for weight on each individual axle. But now, if I take the total GVWR of the motorhome, the limit of the weight that could be in it, and the limit of the weight for the CR-V, its GVWR, I add these two together, then as long as I am under the GCWR, the combined weight rating, in other words, I've added, the maximum weight for the CR-V, the maximum weight for the motorhome, and together they're under the limit of the GCWR, then I'm doing fine. So this is very important. This is how you can establish that you are towing safely. But now we have one more thing we have to consider, and that is right here, the hitch or pin weight, because the CR-V is attached to the back of the motorhome. So there is some weight being transferred right here to the back of the motorhome by the tow bar. Now, the good news on motorhomes, when you're towing a little towed vehicle like my CR-V, and you have them all 4 down, all 4 wheels are down on the ground for the CR-V, well, then there's not very much weight being transferred right here by the tow bar. Indeed, the car is taking the vast majority of the weight, so there's not much here for hitch weight that you have to worry about. But there is some transfer, and that transfer will contribute toward the total weight, or the GVWR, the limit that you can have in the motorhome. And it could have some influence on this rear axle because the hitch is on the back. So any downward pressure on the back transfers the weight over here onto this rear axle. All right, so this is the first example. This is one where you have a motorhome that's pulling a towed vehicle. But now we're going to look at a different example here for a towable RV. All right, so the next example involves our good friends Mark and Julie Bennett from RV Love, and maybe some of you recognize them. Now, the reason why I asked them to, if I could use their example, is because they've had to take the weight ratings that we covered today and adjust them from a motorhome pulling a vehicle to a vehicle pulling a towable. And so, yes, normally for the last few years, they've had a large motorhome that pulls a little vehicle, a little car behind it like we do. But now, here you can see they're doing just the opposite. They have a small travel trailer, and it's being pulled by that vehicle that was being pulled by their motorhome. So they had to work things out here the same way to make sure that they are towing safely. So let's go over it here. First of all, they had to make sure that they knew that the weight of their Jeep Cherokee right here, with everything in it, including them and any cargo and a full tank of gas and all of that, was not going to go over the limit established by the GVWR, that top limit of the weight that it allows. They also needed to make sure that their travel trailer, with everything in it, you know, all the cargo and all of their water tanks and all of that, going down the road, did not exceed the limit of the weight established for its GVWR. But now, they also needed to make sure that the axle on this rear trailer here, it didn't have too much weight on it either. And the same thing for their tow vehicle here, the Jeep Cherokee. And then they needed to make sure that the GVWR, the highest weight limit for their Cherokee, added to the GVWR, or the most weight going down the road for their travel trailer, putting those two figures together did not exceed the GCWR. But now here is where things get much more important to watch what you're doing here with towables, because the hitch weight does come into play here very significantly. Remember, you know, each travel trailer, when it hitches up here, it applies some downward pressure to the hitch on the back of this Jeep Cherokee. Now, where does that weight transfer to? Two places. It will now be included in the total weight of the Jeep Cherokee, so it's got to be considered in the amount that cannot exceed the GVWR. But it also has to be added to this rear axle right here, because all this weight is going on back here. It's going to affect the rear axle. So whatever weight it contributes to the rear axle, it cannot exceed the limit of weight that rear axle can carry. So now, if their tow vehicle here, the Jeep Cherokee, is all within specs here with these weight ratings, and the trailer is all within specs here of its weight ratings, and the two together are under the GCWR for combined weight rating, and the hitch has not put too much weight on the tow vehicle or its rear axle, then they are all set for towing happily down the highway. Well, there you go. Just using this little bit of information that we've covered in this video, you can be sure to properly determine how much weight you can tow in your RV travels. Now, in order to do this, let's kind of recap again, just briefly. And it's as simple as this. You need to take each vehicle in the rig and make sure that each one, the weight of each one, is under its gross vehicle weight rating. Then put the two weights together and make sure that they are under the gross combined weight rating, and then make sure each axle in the rig is not overloaded. And there you have it. You're ready to go. Now, let me address one other point here, and that is that I often see people try to skirt around the vehicle weight ratings. It seems too difficult for them. I'll see them on forums actually get on there and brag to no end about hauling some really heavy weight with a smaller truck. And they talk about how they, soup up their engine a little bit, power it up some, and then how they beef up the suspension, and then between that they're all set to go. My friends, don't fall for that. It's just not the way to do things. Got to understand, these vehicle weight ratings are established by the manufacturers, the designers of these vehicles, and under very strict guidelines, I might add. Now, when they establish the vehicle weight ratings, it's really based on a lot of things, not just engine size or suspension. In fact, there's many things that go into it. For instance, yes, engine, the transmission is important. The braking components are very important. Yes, suspension, but also tires, and even things like the size of the radiator and so on. So many things are taken into consideration here with the vehicle weight ratings by the manufacturers. So be sure that you know and that you are following the weight ratings that are established for your particular rig. And so how do you do that? Well, you need to weigh the rig, and you need to make sure that you weigh each particular vehicle, the RV and the tow or towed vehicle. If a hitch is involved, you need to find out how much that hitch weight is. And how do you do that? Well, actually on Amazon there are hitch scales that you could use that will tell you the weight of the hitch. But most people actually do it a little different way, and it works as well. And that is, you just simply need to know that when a towable manufacturer makes their travel trailer or their fifth wheel, they design it to be balanced the right way. And so with travel trailers, generally speaking, they try to design them so that the hitch is providing no more than about 10 to 15% of the total weight of the RV on the hitch. For fifth wheels, it goes up closer to 20%. You know what I would do? I recommend contacting the manufacturer and just give them a call. They'll be happy to answer the question for you because they want you to safely tow their product down the highway. Just ask them how have they designed their particular travel trailer or fifth wheel to have the weight on the hitch. How much percentage should you use? And using that, you can get very close. Now, if then both of the vehicles in the rig are under their GVWR ratings and the whole rig is under the GCWR rating, and that hitch, even with putting the weight on the tow vehicle, does not bring it over any axle ratings, then you're really good to go at that point in most cases. Now, one other point I want to mention is try not to get all the way up to the limit on the weight ratings. Leave yourself a little headroom if you can. And why do I recommend that? Because as RVers, we kind of have these habits of, as we go along in our travels, we bring things into the RV. We buy this or we buy that, and we're bringing new things in, and we're not even thinking about the weight of these items as they come in. Little by little, all those things accumulate up, and their weight keeps accumulating. And before you know it, if you started right at the limit of your weight ratings to begin with, well, it's not going to be hard to go over them very quickly. So try to leave yourself a little bit of headroom there to work with, knowing that you're probably going to be accumulating some weight as you go along. Now, where do you weigh all of this? Where do you get the information you need? My recommendation is I think CAT scales are very useful in this. You can use pretty much any kind of heavy-duty truck scale, but I find cat scales work really well. And to find one that's near you, just visit catscale.com. And here's a little video I made about that. So here we are on catscale.com, and all you need to do to find one that's near you is go up here to the top in the menu, and there you are, Cat Scale Locator. Let's press that, and here we come up with this page. And as you go down the page, first of all, there's a section right there where you can just decide to enter in where you're located, and it'll pull up however many locations that you want, doing it that way. Or you could also go a little farther down the page, and there you go, you've got a map of all the cat scales in the country, and you can zoom in any way you want and find where the cat scales are that are close to you. By using their website, you should be able to find something that's usable around the area where you are. Okay, so when you take that vehicle to the cat scale and get it weighed, you'll have pretty much all the information you need to make the decisions that you need to make to keep your rig towing safely. Now, my friends, I've tried to make this as understandable and clear as I can. And the reason I did that is because I kind of get the feeling that a lot of people don't look into these weight ratings very deeply or heavily because they feel overwhelmed by them. And the reason for that, I visit a lot of these websites, and they're covering all kinds of acronyms, not just the vehicle weight ratings. They go into every kind of acronym you can imagine. Honestly, that's just complicating things unnecessarily. But if you understand these few weight ratings and how to make sure that you work within their guidelines, well, then you're pretty much all set for towing. So I hope what I've showed you here today has been beneficial and helpful for you. That's it for now. Have safe and happy travels, my friends. Until next time.